bear in Mahler. It's very, very powerful music. He once said, "Only when I experience do I compose. Only when I compose do I experience." There's also a famous story of Mahler meeting Jean Sibelius, the great Finnish composer, in 1907 in Helsinki. And they, of course, being two the symphony is, it must embrace everything. It is the world, okay? There gives you a sense of what Mahler is coming from. Another thing to prior to World War I. He dies just before World War I, which completely redraws the map of Europe and the end of the 19th century, the beginnings of the 20th century, the age of science and technology. His left foot is firmly planted in the 19th century, the left foot being closest to the heart, and his right foot is struggling for solid ground in the 20th century. Of that long line of Austro-German music. Still to come after his death was the expressionism or the atonality of Schoenberg, Berg, and to the 19th century. But consequently, his music can be passionate and soothing and gorgeous. It can be explosive and raw and pounding. Life. It's conflict, it's contrast as life. Okay, so there's a little bit about the music of Mahler and his importance. Now, let's talk. The number 9. Beethoven, Schubert, Dvorak, Vaughan Williams, Bruckner had all composed 9 symphonies and then died. And Mahler felt it was the kiss of death. And if I call this next one the 9th Symphony, really, his fate caught up with him, as it always will. So we have the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, Das Lied von der Erde, the 9th Symphony, and he started a 10th Symphony, got to about the end of the first Some feel that he died and he left sketches, but Mahler, being a perfectionist, would have gone on and revised them, and who knows what he would have done. He might have thrown them out completely, these sketches, and started. Spiritual problem that is laid up front in the first movement, and then over the course of the symphony it is resolved somehow. The symphony's numbers 1, 2, 3, 5, 7, and 8 all end. It also lays out a spiritual problem, but by the end of it we have a child's vision of heaven. And so we end in this kind of innocent purity, childlike vision of heaven, of games being played and candies being unhappy about it. Only the number 6, that has the nickname the tragic, ends tragically in the minor key, offering no escape. There is no spiritual resolution in the number 6. And in many ways, Sam and I were talking narrowing the focus down here. And the Symphony number 5 is an interesting one because it's what's called the first of the middle trilogy. Symphonies numbers 1 through 4 are the youthful symphonies. They are all very strongly inspired by the earlier song. One is youth wins out over death and our fate and so on. We have the youth and freshness of our young lives. The vitality of life wins out. Number 2 is nicknamed the Resurrection, and that one in the end what's the verb I want? You know what I'm talking about. It comes around every year, every spring it's reborn, it dies in the fall and the winter, and it comes back. And that's the idea of the Third Symphony, is that we have this loving God was cleaning the board now, wiping the slate clean and moving on. It's the beginning of his maturity now, the purely orchestral symphonies of numbers 5, 6, and 7, of which number 5 that you'll hear tonight is the first one. By the way, who's going tonight? Just world's great conductors at the turn of the century, and at this time he was the conductor of the Vienna Court Opera, one of the great opera houses then and now in the world. And his habit was to, as a conductor, he was running the opera. Symphonies were kind of confused and people really didn't know what they were all about. My time will come, as he said himself, and as I mentioned, it sure has. He made a number of revisions to it to try and update it. A lot of people found it just too complex. They weren't they work out the orchestration, they apply it to the orchestra. Well, you know, this theme will go with the flute and that theme will go with the bassoon or what have you. This was the first symphony that Mahler did away from the piano, so he was composing and orchestrating of Emil Jakob Schindler. She was the most eligible woman in Vienna, beautiful, talented, gifted, high-spirited, confident, a good pianist, a good painter. She was a good composer herself. She was almost 20 years young. A whirlwind romance, complete infatuation with each other, and this symphony falls right into that category. The fourth movement is the Adagietto, which was a love song from Mahler to Alma. Okay. Music, the relationship between the lines of music, and Mahler became fascinated by Bach at this time period, and you can kind of hear that in the music. But let's turn to the Symphony Number 5 now, and I'll play a couple of musical excerpts for you here. I've got the CD warm. Imagine the last movement of the fifth of Beethoven. Beethoven set that model, and a number of composers